Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we unpack complex topics and bring you the most important insights from a stack of sources. Today, we're taking a deep dive into Australia's fascinating and, well, often challenging relationship with China.
It really is fascinating. It's a relationship that touches on, geopolitics, economics, and also deeply personal experiences within Australia's multicultural society. We've got some really recent poll data and firsthand accounts to explore today.
Yeah, exactly. Our mission today is to try and cut through some of the noise, examine the nuances, and help you understand how Australia balances its strategic interest with its vital economic ties, all while navigating the evolving identity of its Chinese immigrant communities. Okay, let's unpack this. To really understand this delicate balancing act, maybe we should start with the emotional landscape in Australia, specifically how its people view the world's two major powers, the U.S. and China. New polls from 2025 paint a really intriguing picture here.
Oh, definitely. What's fascinating, or perhaps worrying, depending on your view, is the stark shift in public trust towards the United States. According to the Lowy Institute's 2025 poll, only 36% of Australians now trust the U.S. to act responsibly in the world.
36%, wow.
Yeah, that's a staggering 20-point drop from just last year. It's actually the lowest on record.
Oh,
So this isn't just a small dip. It seems to reflect a pretty deep unease.
and when you drill down into confidence in U.S. President Donald Trump specifically.
It gets even starker. Only a quarter of Australians express confidence in him to do the right thing regarding world affairs.
Just a quarter.
And in fact, 68% say they're pessimistic about his second presidency. So yeah, this erosion of trust isn't just a general feeling. It seems very much tied to leadership perceptions right now.
Right, which will then begs the question, if trust in their traditional ally, the U.S., is at an all-time low, does that automatically push them towards trusting China more?
Well, you'd think maybe, but not quite. The same Lowy Institute poll found that only 1 in 5 Australians, that's 20%, trust China to act responsibly.
Still very low then.
Very low, and it's a sharp decline from 2018 when over half trusted China. Although, interestingly, a Pew Research Center report does note a slight incremental improvement in favorable views of China, up to 23% from 14% last year.
Okay, so a tiny uptick in favorability, but trust remains rock bottom for both superpowers.
Exactly. You have this paradox. Trust in the U.S. is historically low, but trust in China is still incredibly low as well. It leaves Australia in a really unique and perhaps uncomfortable position.
Yeah, it creates a unique dilemma, doesn't it? If neither superpower is really trusted, what does that mean for Australia's own foreign policy? More self-reliance, maybe. Or just feeling caught between, well, two difficult choices. And how do Australians process this internally when they're asked about China as, say, an economic partner versus a security threat?
Well, and this is remarkable. They're almost evenly split on that. 50% see China more as an economic partner, while 47% see it primarily as a security threat, almost down the middle.
That close. Wow.
Yeah, but, and this is the crucial but, a clear majority, 69%, still think it's likely China will become a military threat to Australia in the next 20 years. And that perception of threat has actually increased significantly since 2018.
So that duality, the idea of two Chinas, one economic, one potentially threatening, isn't just theoretical for policymakers, it's right there in the public mind too. And it forces Australia into this really agile strategy, probably more than many other nations. I mean, China is overwhelmingly Australia's largest trading partner, right?
Oh, absolutely. The numbers are huge. Two-way trade was valued at $244.8 billion back in 2020. That made up 31% of Australia's total trade.
A third of their trade.
Yep. And Australia's Prime Minister Albanese recently stressed this, calling the economic relationship very much in the interests of Australian jobs and the Australian economy.
Right. So the economic pull is immense.
Immense. Yeah. And this isn't new, remember. Australia joined the China-backed Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank years ago, even when the U.S. objected, prioritizing those economic arguments. Yet at the same time, China's increased assertiveness, things like those live-fire naval drills in the Tasman Sea back in February 2025, they really complicate this balance. So Australia finds itself trying to prepare for both Chinas, the driver of prosperity and the assertive power. It's a pragmatic, if pretty uneasy dance.
Okay, so with these huge economic ties on one hand and these heightened security worries on the other, how are Australia's strategic options actually shaping up? What's the public mood on defense?
Well, the public certainly seems to support bolstering defense capabilities. Half the population wants increased defense spending, and 67%, that's two-thirds, support acquiring nuclear-powered submarines under the AUKUS Pact.
Okay, so strong support for defense investment there.
And the government's official approach to China is described as proactive, patient, and principled. They're trying to diversify exports away from China where possible, while still, upholding national interests. It's a tricky path, especially when you consider that something like 20% of Australia's trade goes right through the Taiwan Strait, a major potential flashpoint.
Yeah, that adds another layer of complexity. And given this incredible tightrope walk, who do Australians actually trust more to manage it? You mentioned the leaders earlier.
Yeah, it's an interesting split in public opinion. Prime Minister Albanese has a 20-point lead over the opposition leader Peter Dutton when people are asked who they trust more to manage the relationship with China and Xi Jinping. But when it comes to managing relations with the U.S. and Donald Trump, they're almost evenly split.
So different leaders perceived as better suited for different sides of that balancing act.
Seems that way, yeah. Clearly, different leaders are seen as having different strengths in this really complex geopolitical landscape.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Let's move from that high-level geopolitical chessboard down to the impact these dynamics are having on Australian society itself, particularly regarding its growing Chinese immigrant communities.
Right. And we're looking at a really significant demographic shift here. Almost 1 million Australians now have Chinese ancestry.
1 million.
Yeah. That's about 4% of the total population. But importantly, it's 40% of the Asian Australian population. Mandarin is the second most spoken language after English. And since 2011, mainland China has actually been the largest single source of permanent migrants to Australia. So this isn't a small group. It's a fundamental part of Australia's evolving identity.
And here's where, for me, it gets really interesting. We heard this fascinating anecdote from an Australian, a Caucasian man who's, deeply embedded in the Chinese community through his marriage. And he's observed this striking shift, almost a reversal in how society views these kinds of relationships.
What did he say?
Well, he recalled a time when it was quite rare and often viewed negatively for a Caucasian man to marry a non-Caucasian woman. There were these awful comments about men seeking submissive wives, that kind of thing. But now he observes that being Chinese or having a Chinese partner is often seen as a big plus. Qualities like a strong work ethic, family focus, good character, these are seen as really desirable.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
It is anecdotal, of course, and as we'll see, not everyone shares that rosy view. Other sources highlight persistent challenges. However, his observation does point towards a kind of perceived positive racial stereotype emerging, maybe, that Chinese men and women are increasingly seen as desirable partners in Australia. You even see hints of it in media sometimes, or with high-profile individuals.
But as you say, it's nuanced. That positive framing doesn't seem to extend everywhere. The housing market, for instance, seems to tell a very different story. That's where tensions really flare up, right?
Oh, absolutely. That's a major flashpoint. Many quote-unquote white Australians express real concern, sometimes outright anger, about what they perceive as rich Chinese buying up multi-million-dollar houses, especially in places like Sydney. They fell, yeah. But China does remain the largest source of approved residential real estate investment proposals by value. That was about $400 million in FY 2024. But it's also really important to note that foreign buyers face significant additional taxes and fees compared to local residents. There are disincentives built in.
Right. So the perception might be outpacing the reality for many people there. And how does this kind of specific tension, say, around housing, feed into the broader sentiment towards immigrants generally?
Well, you see it reflected in the polls. That same Lowy Institute 2025 poll found that more than half the population, 53%, now say the total number of migrants coming to Australia each year is too high.
Over half.
Yep, and that's a 5-point increase from last year. You see a similar sentiment regarding international students, too, with 42% saying the student take is too high. So it points to this broader discomfort with the overall numbers of people arriving, which then, often gets focused or projected onto specific visible groups.
And this leads us to another critical point, doesn't it? Despite their growing presence, their economic contributions, Chinese Australians still face significant systemic challenges. There's this term, the bamboo ceiling.
Indeed. The bamboo ceiling, yeah. It refers to this documented phenomenon where Chinese Australians are statistically underrepresented in key areas of national life. We're talking politics, corporate leadership roles, mainstream media representation. It suggests that despite individual successes and those positive anecdotes we talked about, there are still real structural barriers to full integration and representation at the higher levels of society.
So, okay, with these societal perceptions, these structural barriers, how does it actually feel to be a Chinese Australian navigating this landscape day to day? Let's dig into that personal experience of identity and how the geopolitics and the local media might shape their sense of belonging.
Yeah, it's clearly a complex picture for many. A lot of Chinese Australians, especially first-generation immigrants, report experiencing racial discrimination and ethnic stereotyping quite frequently. Research from the Scanlon Foundation, for example, showed a steady increase in experiences of discrimination based on skin color, ethnicity, or religion. It went from 9% reporting it in 2007 up to 20% by 2016.
20%. 1 in 5.
And beyond overt discrimination, there are also frequent reports of casual racism, microaggressions in workplaces, things that just make daily life more challenging and, frankly, unwelcoming for many.
And what role does the Australian mainstream media play in all this? Does its portrayal help or hinder that sense of belonging?
Well, according to many first-generation Chinese immigrants surveyed, it hinders. A significant concern is that Australian English-language media tends to portray them, or people like them, as suspicious figures, even national security threats.
Really? That's strongly.
Yeah. Over 60% of those surveyed reported actual mental and emotional distress because of this kind of othering language in the media. A striking 78% believe Australian English media reporting on China lacks fairness and balance. And 70% feel the media depicts Chinese Australians, either collectively or individually, as security risks.
Wow. That must have a huge impact.
It does. This perceived negative portrayal directly impacts their efforts to integrate. It makes people feel unwelcome, viewed with suspicion, constantly having to prove their loyalty.
That must create a profound sense of internal conflict then. How do people navigate that? Trying to build an identity, trying to integrate when they feel caught between worlds.
That's exactly the phrase many use, caught between worlds. They often feel culturally and linguistically fluent in Australia. They consider it home now. Yet they also grapple with this contested sense of what it means to be Australian, or whether they fully belong. Some express this really painful feeling of being kind of out of touch with friends and family back in China, but also struggling to fully integrate into local Australian social circles, sometimes because of ideological differences, maybe different views on politics or certain cultural norms.
So it goes beyond just language fluency then. It's about these deeper cultural or value differences that can sometimes create divides.
Precisely. You see with Chinese students, for instance, they often form quite closed circles, naturally drawn together by language and lifestyle similarities. And while that provides crucial mutual support, especially when first arriving, it can sometimes inadvertently hinder broader language acquisition, cross-cultural communication practice, and gaining a deeper understanding of Australian society outside that circle. There's a recognized need, often discussed within the community itself, for individuals to actively try and break those barriers, to express themselves confidently, focusing on genuine communication rather than just, say, perfecting an accent.
But amidst all these challenges, the discrimination, the media portrayal, the identity struggles, it's not all negative, is it? There must be signs of resilience, of positive integration happening too.
Oh, absolutely. It's definitely not all struggle. The Australian government itself has publicly acknowledged the huge contributions of Chinese immigrants economically, culturally, technologically, even politically. And the Chinese communities themselves are reportedly becoming more united, more proactive. They're utilizing legal channels, joining unions, finding ways to protect their rights and advocate for themselves more effectively.
Just a sense of empowerment, maybe.
Perhaps. There's a feeling described in some sources that being Chinese in Australia is now being recognized more as an influence, a group that contributes and shapes things, not just a group that passively follows. That's leading to what some describe as a new life in Australia for many.
And you see tangible signs of this integration on the ground too, right? Things becoming more commonplace.
Yeah, exactly. Things like Chinese cultural practices, maybe specific shops, Chinese package pickup points becoming common in certain suburbs, or the widespread acceptance of mobile payment methods like WeChat Pay and Alipay in Chinese dense areas. It shows this dynamic, evolving cultural landscape. Australia is constantly being reshaped by these interactions.
So we've covered a huge amount today. We've gone from Australia's really high-stakes geopolitical dance between the U.S. and China, all the way down to the intricate social dynamics, the identity struggles, and the signs of resilience within its growing Chinese-Australian community.
Yeah, it's clear that this Australia-China relationship is incredibly multifaceted. You get the economic opportunities and the strategic concerns constantly rubbing against each other on one hand, and on the other, these really complex human issues of belonging, media representation, cultural integration playing out daily. It's a constantly shifting ground for Australia, definitely, both on the world stage and right there within its own borders.
And for you, our listener, we hope this deep dive has offered maybe a clearer perspective on all the different layers of this vital and often quite fraught relationship, revealing perhaps some surprising facts, maybe some aha moments about how these big global forces really do impact individual lives and shape national identity in profound ways.